Good evening. I know an awful lot of you here in this room. For those of you I don't know, my name is Don Anderson. I'm the Executive Minister of the Rhode Island State Council of Churches. And when I found out that the ACLU was going to do this conversation about religious liberty, I was so excited because there couldn't be a more timely topic. And so we'll get into that as we go through the evening. But thank you for being here, and we do want to emphasize that we want to make this as interactive as possible, so you don't be shy about raising a hand or getting engaged in conversation. Let me introduce our panel to you so that you can know everyone. Immediately to my left is Rabbi Sarah Mack, who is the president of the Board of Rabbis and a rabbi at Temple Bethel in Providence, and we gave each other on speed dial and talk all the time. In fact, this is our second time together today. So, Rhode Island is that kind of place. It's really quite wonderful. And then Lynette Libinger is a lawyer who has argued a couple of these cases, and I got to know Lynette through the Cranston West case, which we'll talk about later on. And then the primary reason that we're here today to recognize the 25th anniversary of the Weisman case. And so Debbie and Dan Weisman are here, and they'll be talking about their case. Why is this so important for us today? Well, for those of us who are Rhode Islanders, and then probably everybody here is well aware of the fact that Rhode Island was created to be a lively experiment. And I was just remarking to Lynn, it's amazing to me that a concept that was absolutely radical in 1636 is really just as radical today. That the resistance and the difficulty of people to really accept the separation of church and state, and to really allow these two institutions to exist interactively, but to have this degree of separation is still a pretty active idea, a pretty radical idea. From the religious side, which is obviously my camp, the thing that I know history teaches us is that every time religion gets too close to the civil government, religion loses. We have a lot to lose when we get too close. And I want to use an example because I think if he were here, he would use the example. So I'd like to use the example of Pope Francis. Some of you who know the story of Pope Francis know that when he was very, very young, in his early 30s, he became the head of his order in his home country. In his home country, the wealth was consolidated in the hands of very few people. The masses were very poor. The Roman Catholic Church was very close to the establishment. And so when Roman Catholic priests and theologians started talking about and developing liberation theology, they found themselves not only in conflict with the civil government, they found themselves in conflict with their own church. And Pope Francis became engaged in that and became a defender of that establishment situation. It wasn't until he left Argentina and went to Germany for a period of time and actually had an experience, I'll call it a conversion experience, but an experience that really changed his mind to identify with the poor, that he came back and really fought that. And I just use that as an example of when the church becomes so ingrained with the civil government, the religion loses. So for us, and for us as a council of churches, and we just released a statement on religious freedom that we worked on for almost a year. I am a Baptist, and for us, this is kind of our big flag that we wave. A lot is the separation of church and state. So for us, this is a huge issue. Later on this evening, we'll talk about some things that are happening that are contemporary that really challenge the concept of religious freedom that I'm guessing most of us in this room hold very dear. But the primary reason we came together tonight was to remember and honor the Weisman case. And so I'm going to ask the Weismans Dan and Debbie to talk about this case, and I'll let you talk about it whatever way makes makes sense for you folks. So please share with us.
Okay. Well, I drew the long straw, so I get to speak the least. But the most boring part of the discussion. I'm going to review the history, how this came to happen, and then Debbie will do the real exciting stuff, which starts with, what did your friends think of all this? Okay. Ask that everywhere we went. So here's a nutshell. We're originally from New York, where we were raised. That's myself and Vivian's family, Brooklyn. She's from Bronx, ex-marriage. Okay. So this actually works in here?
Yes.
Okay. So where we're from, separation felt unradical. It was perfectly normal in the way we were brought up in the communities we lived in. And we come up here to a place where there's a rich history in this topic. And our children go to the Providence schools. We live in the city of Providence. I had a teaching job at Rhode Island College, and Vivian had a couple of progression of social work jobs, ending up at the time this case came to be at the Jewish Community Center. And raising two kids and kind of having a good time. I looked like up there. I think I was better looking than now, if you can imagine that. And life goes on. Meredith, 2 or 3 years older than Debbie, 3 years older than Debbie, graduates from Nathan Bishop Middle School, our neighborhood middle school, in 1986. We go to the graduation. It's in June, as I recall. And at the beginning and the end of the graduation, there were religious prayers by a local prominent minister. And one of those prayers had the audience stand, hold hands, bow our heads, and thank Jesus Christ for the accomplishments of the children. Well, I think we were already ACLU members, but if we weren't, we joined that day, or upped our membership to some higher level. Called the ACLU and had some conversations, and life went on. Debbie goes on to high school. We tried to let the school, Meredith goes on to high school. Debbie's 2 or 3 years lower grade. She's coming up through the system. We had complained to the schools, to the Providence, to the local school and to the Providence School Committee, and got stonewalled. Nothing happened. The year that Debbie comes up to graduate is 89, June of 89, and a little earlier than this time of year, probably around January or February, we approached the local middle school, Nathan Bishop Middle School. Principal's name at that time was Robert E. Lee, true. Very, very nice man, very approachable. But when he learned of our concern that there shouldn't be religious activities at a public event, we got stonewalled. We suddenly couldn't have appointments with him. He wasn't available, so on. Eventually, we got a phone call from the faculty person at the middle school responsible for organizing Debbie's graduation, and telling us, I'll see you on Parents' Night. I'm going to talk to you about where we're at with this. Parents' Night comes along, we run into this person, and she says, good news, we got a rabbi to give the prayers this year, so you won't be offended again. And we said, I appreciate that. I'm not the most diplomatic of people, but I think I pulled you off. Vivian's. We're really appreciative, but we'd rather not see that as a solution. They didn't get it. It went nowhere. And eventually, when they refused to change their plans, we went to let the ACLU know, and the ACLU filed for a temporary restraining order in federal court in Providence. That was about, as I recall, about 10 days or so before the graduation. And that was because the school kept delaying us. so it couldn't be early lead time. The week of the graduation, the federal court here denied the TRO, saying, I think there was a very quotable quote, "We don't do McDonald's justice here." I think that's what the quote was. So Debbie's graduation went on with a rabbi, and not very eventful. It was okay. And a few months later, in October of that year, 1989, the district court here in Rhode Island ruled in our favor. That, in fact, the practice is unconstitutional, violates the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. We said, fine, Debbie had a good time in high school, and let's move on. December of that year, the school board appealed the decision to the Court of Appeals in Boston, and the case was heard the following year, and because there was no discovery, both sides agreed to the facts of the case. It went pretty quickly, and we got a decision that year, 1990, the same year that they heard the appeal, that by 2-1 vote, the lower court decision was upheld, and we were still in the right. Yay, we're done. Continue to have a good time in high school. Late in that same year, the Providence School Committee decided to appeal to the Supreme Court. And they bundled their appeal with the state of Utah. And the two states, because they had a case similar to ours, going through their courts, and off they go to the Supreme Court. March of the following year, 1991, to our chagrin, to say, well, Supreme Court grants cert, they're going to hear the case. That was a very disturbing time. And November of that year, the case was heard. We went there. A couple of interesting things. Kenneth Starr, you may recall from the impeachment of Clinton, was the Solicitor General for the U.S. at that time. And the president was the first Bush, so the government's point of view was on the opposite side of ours. So Kenneth Starr argued at the Supreme Court. And it was also Clarence Thomas's first case. This is our first week on the bench. So we go, it's a whole other night here if you want to talk about the Supreme Court. It's quite a show. June of the following year, 25 years ago now, a month and a half from now, the Supreme Court ruled 5-4 that the practice does violate the Establishment Clause. Justice Kennedy wrote the majority opinion, and we won. That was the history. So now we move on to, what did your friends think?
So what's interesting is with each of these timeline pieces that Dad's talking about, there's blips of attention. So every time they decide to appeal, there's attention. We get a couple of reporters. I mean, it's Rhode Island attention. It's not that big of a deal, but some reporters and a little bit of TV interview here and there. So each part, there's 3 blips of attention. You've got their appealing, they heard the case, and we win over and over again. And as a teenager, that feels like a lot. And they were awesome. Dad would call me in advance and say, there's going to be a camera here at 4 o'clock. If you're not home, I don't know where you are. So sometimes I go to a friend's house and hide, and sometimes I'd be there just depending on my teenage mood. I think a lot of things were really lucky for us. The fact that they gave us a rabbi was fantastic because nobody can accuse us that we wouldn't have complained if it was a rabbi. So that was very beneficial for us. The fact that there was no internet or cell phones is fantastic. It's a whole different world. Before Mom and Dad moved ahead with it, they sat my sister and I down and said, if you don't want to do this, we'll stop it now. And I think in a world of internet, I would have said no. I just don't think I can handle that, to be fair. Jessica Alquist is my hero. I don't know how she did it. So Friends, it mostly great, and you find, I'm sure as adults you'll find this, that if a subject comes up and there's that silence, you know that person disagrees with you and you move on. So there was lots of that. Friends who didn't mention it, I knew that they or their parents disagreed, and we just never brought it up. And some friends were fantastic. One of my best friends now I met because he came to me in high school and said he was very interested, and we're still great friends. A couple of bad things. I had this very nice kid came up to me in biology one day, this is sophomore year, and said, "Debbie, I really like you." I was like, "Great, I like you too." And he said, "Well, I'm really sad that you're going to burn in hell." Okay. Not much you can really do with that. That was few and far between. He's now gay, so I'll meet him in hell. We have like just strange, some teachers just thought some inappropriate things were appropriate. The teacher Dad was talking about who got us a rabbi. In the middle of class, we were talking about history, and she stopped mid-sentence and looked at me and said, "I just want you to know what's going on with you and your parents. It's between me and your parents. It doesn't affect school." Don't know what to do with that. So, that was clearly on purpose, and it was very uncomfortable. So that sort of stuff would happen. But mostly good, I would say. We got a lot of hate mail, of course, but we learned really quickly if there was no return address, it was hate mail. And if there was return address, it was something positive, so I kind of knew what to open and not open. And if there were spelling errors, it was hate mail for sure. Yeah, so my sister in college, she had a huge class. It must have been 200 kids, one of those classes. And on her midterm, one of the questions was us. And the professor didn't know who she was, so that was just one of those. She got it right. Yeah. So again, once in a while, a relative would call and say that the case was brought up in their school, and they were excited because we were related, that kind of stuff. So kind of minor things here and there. Anything you want to add, Mom? No? Pretty much the gist of it. I know senior year, I was at a party at this kid's house. His name was Chris, and he was a really nice kid. And somebody came up to me and said, "I can't believe you're here." I was like, "Why? Why?" And he was like, "Well, it's Mr. Lee's house." I didn't know that Chris Lee was Mr. Lee's son for years. I couldn't get out fast enough. I was embarrassed. It felt wrong. He was the nicest kid. He never said anything. That was me. Yeah, there's a really nice guy here tonight. It's Mike, who I know because his brother went to high school with me, and so we have that connection as well. Go.
We, after the decision came down from the Supreme Court, we were approached by Freedom from Religion Foundation. I think they're in Ohio. I don't know quite where they are, but anyway.
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin?
Yeah. Madison, Wisconsin.
And they made us Civil Libertarians of the Year, something like that. Oh, Free Thinkers of the Year. Free Thinkers of the Year. We got to be Civil Libertarians of the Year also because the ACLU here has about the same judgment as the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Anyway, I lobbied. Anyway, we were flown to San Antonio the night before the big gala of the Freedom from Religion Foundation. People approached Debbie on the street and asked for her autograph. So I think, a note of seriousness. This was an amazing experience. It ended up fine. We went through life-altering processes with the kids. Our family came out differently. Basically, nobody got hurt in the end. I mean, it was one of those situations where things could have been much worse, and it came out fine. The importance of the ACLU can't be understated. You need an ACLU. We know now what's going on. It's not even a question. But the importance of the ACLU back, it's 25 years, that's actually 27, 28 years when this began, couldn't have been clearer. And so they handled the case. We had a cooperating attorney, and we went through the whole process. They prepared us each step of the way, supported us. I don't know what would have happened without an ACLU. So if you're not a member, you got to join. I mean, we need the ACLU now more than ever. And even when this historical period ends, there'll be others. So if you join, don't let it lapse because kind of Trump starts to behave or somehow or another neutralized. There'll be other challenges. It's always there.
Would either one of you want to talk a little bit about the impact over the last 25 years, what you think the impact of that decision has made?
For us personally or for the country? Or
Either, however you'd like to address it.
I think for us, it changed our relationship. I think that a teenage daughter and her father don't usually spend a lot of time together. And we found ourselves on a lot of airplanes and talk shows and whatever, so that turned out great, I think. I'm not going to ask you your opinion, but I think it turned out great. It made the abstract statement of what you believe in more concrete and proved to me that one person or two people actually can make a difference. You hear that all the time, but if you live it, it's obviously very different. It made it very clear for me that I did not want to go into law, so that helped. But overall, great for me. I think that nationally, I think now, 25 years later, I don't see an impact. Personally, I think it's a lot of time has passed and other cases have come through, but we have heard people who brought up other cases have reached out to us and said that our case was part of them moving forward. So I guess indirectly, but frankly.
Well, on a personal note, I was a young, like I said, very good looking, assistant professor at Rick, and I had just gotten tenure around the time this case came up. During the course of this case, politicians from the General Assembly called the president of the college and demanded that I be fired for challenging the practice of prayers at school graduations. And the president of the college, who did not support my point of view, was able to say that I had tenure, I couldn't be fired. So on one hand, I had some protection, and that's a lesson, how hard it is for people to stand up when their rights are violated, because of most people have vulnerabilities. Tenure is a very rare phenomenon, and harder to come by in academia. So there's another lesson. On a personal basis, beside that, I got about 5 or 6 publications out of the case. I wrote articles that got published in journals. I wrote a book chapter or 2, and that got me promoted to higher professorial levels. So that was a good thing. Maybe. I mean, for me, it was a good thing. At the national level, as the years went on, less frequently, but at the beginning of this process, we got correspondence from around the country indicating that some school districts had suspended the practice of prayers at graduations, but it appears that most did not. And people have a hard thing to challenge, and then you're subject to the retribution of your community. So I guess there were some modest improvements in what goes on around the country, but clearly more people need to be in positions like we were in.
I'll just add to that. So in addition to Dad having tenure, which was helpful, Mom was the director of the Jewish Community Center and had been told that she'd be supported, which turned out very helpful because the Jewish community tends to have this feeling of don't rock the boat, just kind of be quiet, and they told my parents that they could solve the problem by sending us to the Hebrew school, which is kind of the Jewish community, so that helped. And you all know Rhode Island, so Buddy Cianci, who we all know, called me homely looking on his radio show. So if Mom was around, he would acknowledge me, but if I ran into him and Mom was not around, he wouldn't look me in the eye. So Rhode Island. Yeah. But we were, and I want to say Mom is not up here because she was out of town for a conference when we had to sign the papers. An ACLU conference? Perfect. And Meredith was at school, so that's why it's us, in case anybody's wondering how that happened.
Well, thank you both very much for sharing and for the sharing that personal dimension, because a lot of times I think we don't think about the personal dimension, especially for you as a teenager going through this and what people might have said to you at the time. Obviously, that's some of the horrible things.